contributing in terms of science. He has given something to India in the form of Wadia Institute, where we will keep having geologists for generations, for thousands year, 5,000 year. Uh, Sir has completed his PhD with Professor Ramsey. All the geographers and the people who have some interest in geology, they know that who is Professor Ramsey, right? Mallar and everyone. Uh, so, sir, I am really honored to welcome you in the cultural capital of India, Kolkata. I am really honored to welcome you in Adamas University, the first university in this region with 120 plus acre of campus. We were established in 2015. We have 9 schools, several programs. In our School of Basic Science, we have physics, chemistry, geology, environmental science, forensic science, and mathematics, applied mathematics. In geography, sir, we have various specializations, and definitely in future we will keep in touch and we'll let you know that how we are progressing and how we are doing in it. We will need your blessings. We will need your kind connects. And thank you so much, sir, for being with us. It's an honor. And a National Science Day in Adamas University uh, has made a kind of a small achievement, meet a milestone that we have Thakur sir with us to speak on origin of Himalaya and earthquake hazard. Sir, thank you so much.
Uh, Professor Pandey, I thank you very much for saying these good words about me.
Sir,
And also, I thank you for inviting me to this on this day of the Science Day. And I'm very happy to be with you all people and sharing my
sir,
thoughts.
sir, sir. So now, Kasturi,
Yeah.
can you please share sir's presentation? So, sir, Kasturi will share the presentation, and the moment you say, okay, next, and he'll keep changing the slide.
Okay. You see, Himalaya
Sir,
mountains is one of the most talked about uh, mountain because it is here the basic concept of formation of Himalaya, formation of mountain system has developed. And Himalaya is also important that if there was no Himalaya, then we would not have got monsoons. And so all the cold winds and arid climate from north, that is Tibet, would have swept whole of our Indo-Gangetic plain. India would have been a cold, arid desert, northern, especially northern part of India. Secondly, Himalaya is, you see, have been a sentinel for all the invaders. And all the invaders who came to India all came from the west side. So it has acted as a kind of big uh, barrier. And recently also, the recent story of this Ladakh is also one of the why Chinese have gone back and from their original position, that they knew that in longer term, if there is a war between India, they are going to lose. So, and third thing about Himalaya is that Himalaya, all the major rivers uh, of our northern India, Indo-Gangetic plain, and this all originate from Himalaya. So Himalaya becomes very important. Himalayan glaciers become very important, and so these are the main three uh, importance of Himalaya. And but presently, the climate system, those people who are studying climate change, so it has come to know now that Tibet and higher Himalaya, they control the uh, climate system of a globe. So, and it has become one of the very important aspect in prediction of climate and weather change, that this region of Great Tibet Plateau and Har Himalaya plays an important role. So I start my this talk from this. This is our Earth globe, which is 4 billion years old, and this 4 billion years is based on this thing, that this dating method, and India is one of the, in Karnataka, one of the place where this we have obtained this 4 billion dates. Others were in Greenland, Australia, and few other places. So this 4 billion year old Earth, and in this long period, Himalaya, when we talk about Himalaya, it is only Himalaya started evolving from 50 million years. So it's a very tiny space in this. Next. Can you change the? Yeah. So this is the present distribution of continents. And but if you go in the geological past, the distribution of this continent was different, and continents have been drifting, ocean has been opening up. So the whole of the earth, there was a lot of geological changes, and several concepts came out of this to study this change. Next. So this is Triassic, sometimes 100, more than 100 million years. And this assembly of continents called Gondwana land, and it was Alfred Wagner who gave this idea of Gondwana land. And actually, why this idea came, that during early 20th century, there were these colonial power who went to these countries like Africa, South America, in India. So all these studies being done, early pioneers. So they found that everybody was discovering something in this continent. And this Gondwana land came also from India, becomes very important in this. This Gondwana comes from Gond tribe of Madhya Pradesh. So the British Geological Survey, British geologist in the Geological Survey of India, so they described some of the features which was very essential to reconstruct this Gondwana land. So that's why they called it Gondwana land. And out of these, they found that first thing is that there is a very well fit, means continents, make a good fit, like your South America, eastern coast fits with Africa. Similarly, India fits on the one side with Africa, and the eastern side with Antarctica. So all this was based on two things. One was this Glossopteris fossils, and there were other fossils also. So this plant fossils they found in all these continents. Then these reptiles, which are they found in different parts of these continents. So if the continents were separated, this kind of situation would not have come. So that was the idea that Alfred Wagner came up with this idea, that Gondwana land and assembly of these continents as a Gondwana land. But this Alfred Wagner hypothesis, became dead in a way for several years, tens of years. Nobody bothered about this, because that time the other scientists like physicists and mathematicians, they did not believe it, because they found there is no mechanism to how this could happen. So this hypothesis became dead for a few years, for about a decade. Next. So this is also another this assembly of evidence the continents were these continents were joined together. Like this eastern coast of South America joining with the western coast, and what we found this brown color. These were the geological formations, their ages, types of rocks. They found common, and they found that they extend. If you join them, these brown color rocks, they similar rocks of similar age, they extended. And also another very interesting in Permo-Carboniferous time, there was glaciation in all these continents, and even they could uh, find that this glaciation had direction of movement on the basis of striations they left on stones. So this glaciation period was also common from Africa to South America. So this is one of the evidence for this. And then another was this shelf region of South America and shelf region of Africa. They joined together. So that these are some of the evidences for continental drift. Next. So this was the assembly 200 million years. You see, this India was joined on the eastern coast with Antarctica, on the western coast with Africa, Madagascar, and Australia was in a different position. And India was part of this Gondwana land. Then to the north was a vast ocean called Tethys. Next. So India was separated northward some 100 million years ago, and it got separated and moved northward. And as it was moving northward, there is a large sea, Tethys Ocean, more than 5,000 kilometer wide Tethys. And then this, as India moved northward, this ocean was closed, and finally India collided with the northern continent, and that gave birth to the Himalaya. So I am going to tell the story of this, what were the processes, how this ocean was closed, and how the continent produced the Himalayan mountains. And for this, what we have found in our studies, and there are other people also working, that this northwest Himalaya we found as Ladakh, Zanskar, and this part of Kashmir, that we have a complete story being told in this region. And that was the main reason that, next please. Yeah, this, when this continental drift hypothesis did not find favor, then came this idea of ocean floor spreading. You see, during Second World War, this Germans submarines were one of the major weapon to fight the Germans and the Allied forces. So they started mapping, and they found that Germans were mapping the ocean bottom for the submarine warfare. So after this war, Second World War, the scientists developed interest in to map the ocean, and so they started this big program, ocean drilling program, funded by NSF and US. So during this mapping of the magnetic anomalies, and also after that, geological studies across ocean, across the Atlantic Ocean, both from east to west, they found that there is a ridge called Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which is showing this volcanic rocks. They found evidence that this is the region where this ocean is breaking up and bringing this new lava, and this whole ridge extended along the entire Atlantic Ocean. So they found this idea that ocean do open up. So ocean has opened up. So this was the major discovery of ocean floor spreading, and that gave birth to then ideas of people then studying deeper earth. They found that the mechanism for this, And they found that their main concept behind this was that the interior of the earth, this molten magma below the crust, have a convection system. So where this, according to this model, where these currents when rise up towards the continents, they diverge, the ocean opens. And where they converge, mountains like Andes and like Himalaya, they form. So this was the beginning of the plate tectonics. So then in plate tectonic concept, we include both the ocean and continents. Like in Indian plate means we have got both Indian continent and Indian ocean floor also. And similarly, like here, mid-Atlantic range, in Indian Ocean also there is a mid-Indian Ocean range. Next. So this is a basic concept of how where the plate, you see this in plate tectonics, where the plate diverges, we found a rift system, and as still this divergence continues, the rift system changes into ocean. Like we have evidence of rift system, Rift Valley in Eastern Africa, that was a aborted rift. So this rift system changes like in Atlantic rift system. If the process continues, then the ocean opens up. So these are the basic concepts of opening of the ocean. Next. Next. So at one place, this ocean opening up, other places in this plate tectonic concept, that how the ocean closed. So in this is an example, one of the example, that convergent plate boundary. Here, oceanic crust is converging against the Indian crust. So what happens here that your whole of the ocean crust sinks down to the below the continent. And when this ocean crust goes deeper, it melts. And then it generates magma, and magma then comes towards the Earth's surface, and they form the island arc system, continent crust. Like today's example, like Japan is one of the island arc system, where the ocean plate is still undergoing the Japanese islands, and they produce the volcanoes and also seismicity. Next. So India, I'm coming more towards the birth of Himalaya. So 71 million years ago, India, the position was northmost, that was below, it was south of equator. So 70 million years, India was south of the equator, and it was more than 5,000 kilometers away. And as India started moving northward, so these are different pictures in different 50 million years, 38 million years. So this is a different position of the continent marked. That is a special subject, polar wandering, based on paleomagnetic data. They could work out this kind of, from the rocks, this kind of movement from different parts of ocean and continent. They could reconstruct this movement or northern, from south to north of the Indian continent. And finally, this brown color in India is the present situation. So at 50 million years, when this ocean was closed, it collided. Collided means crust part came in contact with the crust part of the Eurasian plate. So these two plates collided. We call it continent-continent collision. So this continent is the main engine which generated the Himalaya. Next. So evidence of this, just when we in Himalaya, when we go to Tethys sequence, we find a complete fossiliferous sequence. about 10 to 12 kilometers thick, and we find this richly fossiliferous. And earlier, because there was no dating system, so this paleontology subject had advanced, and they, in Europe mostly, they established the geological time scale based on these fossils. So it was, this paleontology was a very important subject. The whole sequence means the timing and age of these rocks could be formulated. So this is the one of the, I would say in India, Triassic in Spiti. Got a complete Triassic sequence, and it was early 20th century. Hayden was working in the Geological Survey of India, who established this stratigraphy in Spiti region. So we can just say that how old is our geological exploration when we compare to global geology. Next. So this opening I have just explained, you have opening of the ocean, and here that when continent collide, means in this you see this continental crust on the left side and continental crust on the right side, and that this continental crust, as it was oceanic crust was denser, so it was sinking under the continent. So whole of this oceanic crust, one completely destroyed under the continent. So then what happens, that continent, Indian continent, came against the Eurasian continent. That was a Tibet, later we call it. So India, the whole ocean was consumed along this suture zone, we call, and the two continents came together. And for this purpose, you see, because continent is lighter granitic crust, and ocean is a denser crust. So oceanic crust can sink deeper into earth, but continent could not sink, because below the crust is the material of denser, this density of the mantle. So continent could not sink. So this is the concept of collision, that when continents could not under thrust the continent, another continent, so these two continents came against each other, and that we call continent collision. And in Himalaya, this continent, when ocean was destroyed and these two continents came, it was about 50 million years ago. Now we know that this collision between continent of India and continent of Eurasia took place 50 million years, and this collision, and India was still moving north, and even today it is still converging towards north. So then this continent couldn't sink, and it just pushing against India, pushing against the Tibet Eurasian continent. So then whole Himalayan mountain system arose to the present shape. Next. So this is that was the basic concept. Now I have come to the Himalaya. This is the DM generated from space image. Here Tibet, this is the largest and highest plateau on our earth. And even this area is so large that Tibet and Himalaya, Higher Himalaya is also part of Tibet. When we see geography in physiography, so Higher Himalaya, Tibet forms the biggest uplifted part of the globe, Earth. And now climatologists also take consideration of this, the Himalaya, the climate change, and also the generation of this monsoon that has been affected and controlled by this uplift of the Tibet in such scale. And just south of the Himalaya is the Ganga and Indus basin. So what happened in India? Himalaya started rising. So naturally when started rising and atmospheric agencies like rain, snow, they started eroding these mountains. And the Himalaya, as Himalaya started rising, in front of the Himalaya, rising mountain, the depression was generated. And in this depression, Himalaya eroded material of Himalaya brought by rivers were deposited in these two depression of Ganga depression and Indus depression. And then that the Indus Ganga plain we call was created like this. And the present example of this kind of situation is present day our this Ganga plain. Ganga plain, what happening today? That you see Himalayan rivers bringing material and depositing in this thing. And as Himalaya is still converging, moving northward. So one day it is a making of Himalaya, early stage, another extension of the Himalaya, that this will also rise and form the outer part of the mountain chain. Next. So Himalaya is 2,500 kilometers long system, and there is a syntaxis, there is a curve on the west, we call western syntaxis, and Himalaya takes into curve, and because from east to northwest is the eastern syntaxis we call. And what we find here that these we can divide the Himalaya into these different tectonic zones, and these tectonic zones also correspond to the physiographic zone also. So physiography and here geology combined, and these zones are based on this. So we have got a sub-Himalaya, or we also call outer Himalaya, then lesser Himalaya, then further north is greater Himalaya, Har Himalaya. Then further north is Tethys Himalaya. Tethys Himalaya is the Tethys sequence, this ocean, which was the part of the ocean. So we get this sedimentary rocks, fossiliferous rocks of Tethys Ocean. And this greater Himalaya was at a depth of 15 to 20 kilometers, formed at that depth. And presently we see greater Himalaya on the surface. And through these our geological studies and geochemical studies, and also dating, so this from 20 kilometer depth, so what we see today, greater Himalaya, has come from 15 to 20 kilometer depth, and it has come up and brought to the surface. And this deeper rock, when you rise up, the erosion starts. So this means the cover of this Har Himalaya was some about 10-15 kilometers. There was a crust rock which were eroded away. So that is a kind of concept that how Har Himalaya was formed. And sub-Himalaya, this lesser Himalaya is part of the Indian continent, which became part of the Himalaya. And then sub-Himalaya is the outermost Himalaya, mostly it were deposited on the rivers. Next. So this is in the, just to give a perspective, 3-dimension, and this, you see, from this, I come from, say, south, your Ganga plain, from Ganga plain, the main boundary thrust days, you come to lesser Himalaya. So this, where this lesser Himalaya and outer Himalaya, including Ganga plain, meets, we find a part, and we call main boundary thrust. Means there is, and then further north, lesser Himalaya is overridden by the Har Himalaya. And this overriding where the plain which brings this together is called main central thrust. So these, and then we have STD, and then Tethys sequence, and then this Indus Brahmaputra Sutra. This is the place where the, and this is the continent, contact between the Indian continent and the Tibet, that was a part of the Asian continent. So Himalaya has grown as India collided with this thing, then because continent were pushing north. So what happened that this Indian continent, it fractured in a way, broken and brought into slabs, and they broke along these big fractures. STD, MCT, these are names like main boundary thrust, main thrust. These big fractures, they dwell below, and then they brought the rocks up, and then they were kind of slabs. So Himalaya is actually what is a situation that Indian northern part of India broken into this by these faults, and then uh, as they has climbed one over the other. So this formed the architecture of Himalaya. These are broken slabs and riding one over the other, and then along these things. So that gave rise to our concept of Himalaya. And Tibet was because India was pushing. So this uplift of Tibet is because of this northward convergence or push of Himalaya against the Eurasia of Tibet. Next. This is just to show you this higher Himalaya. This clouds are there, and then north is the Tibet. Tibet plateau is average height is 4 kilometer high. So everything. If you are in Tibet, the river flows at like in Ladakh. If you go, the Indus River flows at altitude of 10,000 feet. That is almost 3,000 meters. Like in a Ganga plain, we are river is flowing at maybe 0 to 100 meters above sea level, but here the river flows in Tibet at an altitude of 3,000 meters. Like if you go to Ladakh, then the Indus River flows at an altitude of 10,000 feet, that is 3,000 meters. And so this is a raised plateau, and this next please. Now I just want to give you the idea of this. I have got shown you these 4 tectonic zones and physiographic zones of Himalaya. And for a common man, if you go from south to north from Himalaya, from the Ganga plain northward toward the higher Himalaya, what will you find in the south, outer Himalaya? And these are sub-Himalaya also we call. And there were low hills, 400 to 800 meters thick. And topography is also thick forests. So all along this Tarai region, and we call Shivaliks also, the low-lying hills, 400, 800 meters. And all this, they are deposited in rivers, sediments which are deposited. And there are valleys in this, like Doon Valley is in a part of this outer Himalaya. Yeah, next, please. Next, yeah. So, average elevation, average elevation of lesser Himalaya is to maybe 1,000 meters, starts from 1,000 meters, goes to like your Darjeeling, about 2,000 meters, hill stations. And maximum elevation is, say, about, in general, 1,000 meters. But in some places like Pir Panjal, the elevation of lesser Himalaya can go up to 4,000 meters. Here is Dhauradhar range in Himachal, and these are all lesser Himalayan rocks at lower altitude. Next. And you see, this is also one of the showing of lesser Himalaya. That here, this is a river, in the river Ravi, and both sides are terraces. So these rivers, major rivers, have generated terraces and deposited material, eroded material by the river, and making terraces, depositing on the both sides. And this is in Chamba, one of the largest terrace, where a whole town has located on these terraces. Next. So this is just to give you the view of this greater Himalaya. This is picture taken from Pauri in Garhwal Himalaya. So in the foreground, all this topography, physiography of the lesser Himalaya. And as you see, suddenly it rises up to great height of higher Himalaya. So it's all snow covered in glaciers. So this is just to give you an idea of how from lesser Himalaya go to higher Himalaya. Next. Now this is the Mount Everest. Generally people go from Nepal, trek through all that. This is from Tibet, Rongbuk. Mount Everest, at the base, there is a road, Chinese constructed road, and you can reach up to the base of the Mount Everest in a vehicle through road. Next. So this is just to, the students, we take the students along this, across this, some of these traverses from say Chandigarh or from Punjab, right up to Ladakh. There is a very good now this Leh Manali road. So those who have not been to Leh must go and must go through this Leh Manali road. So you see beautiful geology and beautiful physiography. Next. So here I just wanted to give you the concept of closing of this thing. You see, this is India, and there was a vast Tethys Ocean. And this ocean was closed, and there was an island arc next. So this is the concept of how the ocean closed. You see, when the oceanic crust is subduction below the continental crust, we have formed the island arc system, or we call magmatic arc. And then we have a different this tectonic regime, core arc, accretionary with oceanic crust, back arc. These are different geologically recognized regimes in the past. Next. So when we started our work in 1976 in Ladakh, so Ladakh was almost terra incognito. There were, you see, when we 76 started work in Leh, there was no petrol station. There was Ladakh, there was petrol we had to bring from Srinagar. There were roads were also very few. So we used to go every year through army assistance. Army used to write to the government, defense ministry, we used to get a permission. So we used to go on our own vehicle from Bhatia, Dehradun, and then we traveled in these vehicles, and all the facilities we got through the army, like ration, petrol, even breakage. Several times our vehicle got to army this thing. So that time, 76 onwards, at least for 10 years, the Ladakh was a very remote area. So most of the work we used to do is through camping, and also and ration we used to get from army. So that was a really remote area which we investigated. And this is a kind of geological map we produced. Next. So these are the different, just want to show you, we brought these samples and collected all these different kind of data on geochemistry, dating, sedimentary rocks. So all these different studies, within geology, multidisciplinary studies brought us to understand the closing of the Tethys Ocean. We found all the elements, or perhaps all the elements and tectonic regimes in the Ladakh. So we found Ladakh was a small laboratory, a small model. Next. So this was a model proposed that time. So now there is some modification in this, always it happens. So what was happening in Ladakh was we found that we had if you see upper part, Lesser Himalaya, that was our concept of Lesser Himalaya. Then Tethys Himalaya, so this was the Indian continent. And India was moving northward. It was more, and north of the continent was this brown color is the ocean, oceanic crust of Indian Ocean. And then this ocean and the northern on the easternmost part is the Karakoram zone. So this wide ocean was closing between India and Eurasia. Karakoram was a Eurasia. So our studies, we studied the entire this area during pioneering work. And then we established this through our studies in geological studies. And we established this model, which was very similar to the established type model, that when the ocean closed and how the continents, lower below, how the continents collide, and we get the present situation. Next. So this is just to show you the Ladakh topography. Now Leh is a very big tourist center, and now we go and see a lot of changes. It completely has changed, and how the tourism has changed the economy of the Ladakh and Leh. Large number of foreign tourists. When Ladakh opened, foreign tourists were the first to visit. A large number of foreign tourists visited the area, and then started or Indian tourists. Now there are large number of people going. So Ladakh is one of the very interesting area, and the physiography and scenery is different. It is different from the green Himalaya. It is cold, arid desert, but it is most beautiful place. Next. This Indus Valley. Next. Yeah. This that was a Indus Valley, and that was a Leh, early picture. And the Indus River flows through that. This is just to give you an example. The mountains on the background are Tethys sequence. There is sedimentary rocks. This Tethys, remnant of the Tethys, and this is the frontal part of the Ladakh range. This northern plate, and this is just to give you very picturesque village and monastery called Ramajuru, very famous. And then there is a lake, small lake. This lake has been breached, but these called quaternary deposits. So people go and work and produce very good work on this quaternary climate. We have all the signatures of the whole entire quaternary period. Next. So that was a story. I tried to attempted to give my kind of explanation and version of the origin of Himalaya. Now I come to earthquakes, because we are very concerned about Himalayas and earthquakes, because Himalaya is still pushing northward, at a 5 centimeters per year. And as it is pushing northward, so it against the Tibet, so it makes the whole Himalaya, we call it tectonically active mountain belts. And because it is active, so because of the activeness, it produces seismicity. So the whole Himalayan belt is seismically active. So what in the historical past, these 4 major earthquakes earlier have taken place, and they were fairly well studied on that time, when mostly there were no instrumentation, but mostly studied that through field surveys. So just to give you an example, 1904 Kangra earthquake, 8 magnitude, killed 14,000 people. 1905. Similarly, 1934 devastated Bihar, northern part of Bihar and Nepal. There are also some 8,000 people were killed. And the 1897, very big Shillong earthquake. And they are very large 8 magnitude earthquakes. And so these were a great devastation. These areas, what we have shown, they are the affected areas by these mountains, by these earthquakes. Next. This is now, these earlier earthquake studies were mostly done by there was earthquake surveys. That time was the geological survey of India. I used to go. These teams went their area and they collected this all the data from through the personally traversing, is traveling in the area, collecting all the data of damage. So based on the impact of the earthquake and the damage aspect, is how the house, what kind of houses are damaged and all that, plus count of the deaths, human loss. So on based on that, like 1905 Kangra earthquake, I give you an example. So this whole Kangra district was traversed by the geological survey. Those that time this pilgrims, the geological officers were British. They were also their colleagues with the Indians also. So this their pilgrim wrote a very big memoir on the 1905. He had traversed every places, villages, wrote it down very detailed, and on that basis they built a map. What are, and give a different intensity. Intensity means damage. How much damage? Because in earthquake also the maximum damage where the highest, then intensity decreases, and as you go away, the intensity like earthquake happens in Kashmir, we are not affected. So this was the period of this study producing on the based on intensity earthquakes, and there were all the recordings of these were done. There was some seismographs of instrument in Europe, but this they used to record and that based on the data. But now lately seismicity has advanced in instrumentation, particularly geophysical, and also space technology, geodesy. So everybody now is directed to study the seismicity, and also to main purpose objective is to predict this earthquake. So here you see the seismicity, one of the example. All over the different parts, different country, different groups from country, and also from large number of teams in Nepal. They have totally, for the last 2 decades, they are instrumented, putting their instruments everywhere, and they will go on recording this thing, and to study the pattern of seismicity. So here I give you an example where our institute we have got also our exactly government project, for more than 20 stations we have got, where the technology has improved now. All these 20 stations are placed on the ground, and if there is small earthquake, 8 earthquakes is big, it causes havoc. But even small earthquake, which we don't feel, but the instrument can detect that. All these are recorded, so we call magnitude, like 2.5, 3 magnitude, we don't even feel it. So all these, and so these, there's a network what the institute has put. So these instruments there, they record all these any earthquake activity. So previously, when we started this work, there was a big problem. We used to keep these instruments, and we keep a guard there and everything. And this data used to come in paper, and the people will go and bring this data, then sit here, analyze long time. So within this, within last more than about a decade, the science has grown so advanced that now at present I give you this idea that these about 20 stations of Wadia is receiving that any earthquake tremor goes, it comes recorded there in the instrument there on the site, and is transmitted through this satellite, and data is recorded here. So we have got online data. And earthquake, that's why you see in, these days there is a news on earthquake somewhere happening in a different part. So this technology has advanced, especially recording this instrument, these earthquakes, and we hope that someday the main effort is to how to prevent people from this hazard. Next. So these are other various different earthquakes, historical earthquakes. So some of these earthquakes are there in historical. We have tried to dish out information. Like I give you example, 1555. There's one earthquake. Earlier we didn't know that people went into what we call now archaeoseismology has also come, historical seismology. So people, some even geologists, they have gone into this, like Kashmir. They dug out all the history records, archives from Kashmir, and they have found that because that time Mughal period was there, they used to record history also. So there is a historical record in Kashmir. There is a description that this particular Sardar or who was ruling, and he went on a horse and he saw their damage record and all that. So, and earthquake feeling. So that is a lot of information, descriptive information, what the earthquakes they felt. So we could dish out such things like, and we found that earlier we didn't know that there was this earthquake in 1955. So this is very important for us to understand the sequence of this earthquake. So many of these earthquakes now 55, 1803, 1833. Some of these earthquakes have been studied based on historical record, and also so we know the better picture of the entire sequence of them. Earlier we knew only 4 major earthquakes, but now we are finding more and more. Next. So I would like to just mention that this earthquake, I have written, we are all concerned in Himalaya. This hazard means this danger when next big earthquake strikes in Himalaya. That is really worry for everybody, all people living in Himalaya, and also for a country. Loss in economic terms when it comes to this earthquake happening to the country. So I give you an example. It's very recent, 2005, in Pakistan occupied Kashmir near Muzaffarabad. There was this, and it was not 8 magnitude. It was 7.6 magnitude earthquake, just like equivalent of Kangra. It occurred and it killed. This is a record of the Pakistan, their seismic record, and several teams went also after this. Next. So 80,000 next, earlier, please earlier than this. 80,000 people were killed. So and even 2 schools were totally, because it took place at morning time. So school children were just buried under this. And they have estimated the loss to the economy about $1 billion. Next. So this is a more recent one. You must have read it in newspapers. In Nepal, there was this 7.8 magnitude earthquake, and here some 8,700 deaths were there, and 40,000 houses were destroyed. So earthquakes in Himalaya is a concern for all of us, that if in terms of human loss, and as well as this loss to the economy. So Himalaya, this is one aspect of hazard. Besides that, now and another aspect is coming, environment as a whole in Himalaya. Population has increased and increasing still. So we are in a way destroying the environment ecosystem in Himalaya, particularly building of these infrastructures, building too many roads, like here it has happened in Garhwal and also in other parts also. So it is they're making the slope unstable. So unstable slope means a lot of large landslides, and then sometimes what happens, climate system behaves very, very peculiar and way. And then you have tragedy like Amarnath, isn't it? Tragedy of Kedarnath. So Himalaya has become now a natural hazards like Amarnath, earthquakes, and now also climate change, the glaciers are receding. So Himalaya, entire Himalaya is a system, ecosystem, which is being slightly getting disturbed. So unless we take more strong measures, try to save this more, save Himalaya through this, it has to be only through the people participation. So, and a lot of people have to go, a lot of effort, and there a lot of research has also to go. So how to stabilize these landslides, stabilize slopes, and also how to keep a pressure group of environmentalists, that we don't build too much. Even if we build, it has to be built according to aspect of the seeing the ecology of the Himalayan system. Next. Next. Yeah, this just to show you how the technology has improved now. Is it satellite technology? Like it, one is a point here in Bangalore, another in Tibet, right? These two distances through satellite, these 2 points distance, these satellite technology, geodesy we call, it is separate size also. There is a even millimeters change in their position. If they becomes 4 centimeters less, it is, you can work it out. You can through this geodesic method and also instrumentation also. So it has to be instrumentation by ground and from this satellite space technology. So you can just see, even we know how much with respect to Tibet. What suppose one point in India, it is moving at a rate of 4 to 5 centimeters. So that this kind of data is all very, very useful, and we are able to understand now the modeling and also understand how the can we predict earthquakes. So every effort is towards this end. Next. So finally, this is also a recent model. We have just published on book, an active force of Agarwal by Springer. So this we have also in the, I'm also working on this lately on earthquake geology. So this is the model hypothesis. These are outer Himalaya, lesser Himalaya, higher Himalaya, this Tibet plateau. And these are some of the faults which I just showed you earlier. And now what has happened, that geophysics has come in the, they're studying, they can study depth up to 20 kilometers even more. And through these geophysical studies, we are able to see the very crust, the boundary of this mantle and crust. Also, now what we see within the crust, we have found one break. It is a kind of fault. We call it, there is a decollement kind of thing. So now we understand better that there is a decollement at a depth in the outer part, 8 kilometers, and goes to 20 kilometers more. In the this decollement is Himalaya sits over this crust. So these are the different parts of Himalaya, and Tibet sits. And all these faults, they merged with this thing. And this study of the earthquake, seismicity, data being generated all over Himalaya by different groups. We find that seismicity is taking place at a depth of 10 to 20 kilometers. It's a wide zone. So, and This is the zone where this strain is accumulating. And the basic concept now is we understand that what happens is India is pushing north against Tibet at a centimeter, 4 to 5 centimeters per year. And it generates this seismicity in this zone. We call it seismicity zone. So in this seismicity zone, small, this one India is pushing, that means it is cracking here. So these smaller smaller events of earthquakes is cracking, means crust. Sorry, your Indian crust is started breaking here. So when this smaller big break occurs, so big earthquake is generated and it moves to the south. So this is a basic concept now, that earthquake generated at a depth, bigger earthquakes which we have from this seismic zone, and this is because of this zone where elastic strain is being accumulated, this zone, and this elastic strain, when it reaches to certain extent limit, so some point equilibrium, it cannot hold, so it breaks. So this breaking of the crust at a depth of most of earthquakes 10 to 20 kilometers. So this produces the earthquake, and that's why, and it moves to the south. So that's why the whole Himalaya becomes earthquake prone. And as you move south, this intensity decreases. So, like in Delhi, if there is earthquake here in Garhwal Himalaya, we feel up to Delhi. Next. Next. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir, for your delightful lecture. And we are very grateful to you for sharing those information with us. And now we will proceed towards our Q&A session. So I will request our participants, if they have any questions, they can post there in the chat box, and also they can unmute themselves and ask directly to Dr. Thakur.
We have one question. Sorina, if you
Yes, we have one question. Okay, sir. The question is from Deep Chaudhary. Sir, he has asked that if when the continent collision happens, is it possible to feel that collision when a person standing on that continent?
No, you see, these are movement is this. India is colliding, means rate of India colliding against the Tibet is very, I told you, geodesy tells on a few centimeters. So you cannot feel it. This process is very slow. It's a conceptual process. So you will feel only when when there is accumulation of this convergence, and then a limit is crossed, then when earthquake takes place, that you will feel. So coming of earthquake, this is a kind of feeling.
Okay. And sir, he also have asked, is if that when the collision is happening, if there are any possibilities to form an earthquake, and if there an earthquake form, how much it will be its magnitude?
You see, the earthquakes all the time is happening. I told you there is a earthquake belt below the Har Himalaya, is about 15 kilometers wide belt. So all these earthquakes are occurring there. So these earthquakes are smaller earthquakes to very big devastating earthquakes. So that's why whole research is still continuing to understand that when the next, and that is also one thing, when the earthquake takes place, its basic concept is this elastic strain is accumulating below the Har Himalaya. And this elastic state, when it is accumulating, it produces small earthquakes. And then a time comes when this, suppose it breaks. I give you an example. If you are wooden something like a stick, if you want to break, it will not break like this. First, it will first produce small cracking, and there will be small fractures, small kind of cracks in that wood, and then finally grows. So it is something like that, that when the whole crust, it is being deformed, means be compressed. So what happens that these smaller earthquakes is preparing in a way. So a time comes when all this combining earthquake indications of this breaking. When will it occur? That still we do not know. For that, all effort is being done. So this big earthquake comes. So then this stain which were accumulated and the earthquake releases the stain. So once it releases, again the earthquake has got a recurrence, repeated history. So once earthquake occurs, suppose, and after another 500 years, we find that another earthquake comes the same. So earthquake also repeat, the stain is released, again start accumulating, then again release. So earthquakes also have recurrence interval. So we must know, we know that more recent studies, and they're still in development stage, that they know that big earthquake will take 600 years. One earthquake, then about 600 years back. So if we know there is an earthquake in 1905, next will come. This earthquake will repeat after 600 years. So this is we call recurrence interval. So that is also people are still studying, and there is no answer yet.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is another question from Aparajita ma'am, Aparajita Bhattacharya ma'am. She was asking that recently some fractal models have been suggested for the earthquake dynamics. So what will your comment on this? What will you comment?
I could not, can you repeat it?
There are some, recently there are some fractal models have been suggested for the earthquake dynamics. Can you say something about this?
Fracture model. No, there is a fracture at depth model. That is okay. Fracture is crust at depth. The earthquake occurring at a greater depth, say more than 10 kilometers. So dynamics means only you can make theoretical this thing, or the only thing you will have is that you will record an instrument. So I can't say more than that.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we have another question from Joita Shamanto. Question is, what might the continents look like again in future after a few million years?
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, after a few million years, one very interesting thing I would say in the Indian context, the Ganga basin will rise because India is still pushing. So Ganga basin will start uplifting, and with mountain system out like lesser like Shivalik ranges, lower relief and lower altitude mountain system will evolve.
I have a question.
Future is very difficult because time scale is such, that we cannot, very difficult.
Okay.
You can only imagine some model, a theoretical thing. That is only possible.
Sir, Sanjeev sir has one question to you.
Yes. Professor Thakur, this is a nice lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to know whether, I heard all the geologists, geographers, they, suggest mechanism why an earthquake has happened. can we predict the earthquake? Is there a way to predict earthquake
No, we
beforehand?
cannot produce. Prediction, we can only know that this area has experienced earthquake. Long-term prediction we can say. But short, we can say that this earthquake will, 8 magnitude occur, will come after 300 years or something like that. But prediction is not, but there is a effort is going on now. There is some recent research is there that in, Japan and America are the leading countries for this earthquake size. So what they have found in Japan now, that because of these all tremors, this is some 20 seconds, they'll know 24, exactly I don't remember, but less than a minute, some seconds, they can predict. So what they are seeing that much time, say maybe 20 seconds or 30 seconds, at least if you know, you can do they're trying now, they say your nuclear plant or some switch, they have some system, how to close this system. So if this is information given to them, say 30 seconds before, at least they can switch the activity. Otherwise not. That kind of prediction is being developed. But it remains, I think, it's more theoretical. Practical, maybe it will take some time.
Okay. I have another question that you talked about Himalaya. Now, how high should be a mountain should be in the world? How high? Everest is the highest mountain.
No, higher, great Mount Everest is the highest.
Yeah, I
So
know.
that is 29,000 feet.
Yes, but
Some feet, exactly don't remember.
now why is that? Not have any mountain higher than this in any other country.
No, it will rise also. Himalaya is still rising. And Himalaya, because in Himalaya it is I say continent, two continents have collided. There is an example. Other places you don't have that the continents have collided and in this very simple form. Situation. Main thing is the situation of Tibet and Indian continent and meeting of these colliding and converging. India is still converging. So this is situation special where we have got. Otherwise, we have mountains. Andes is also quite high.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is one more question, sir, from Shashwata Bhattacharya. Bay of Bengal experiencing huge depositions from all the physiographic units of India. What will be the possibilities of landform creation in the present Bay of Bengal according to the geosyncline theory?
You see, this Bay of Bengal, you have big, because in Bay of Bengal is very big geological features. We call Bengal fan. So all the rivers, the Ganga plain rivers, they bring all this material, these soils, rocks, and rock mass. They all come, they're deposited in Bay of Bengal through Bay of Bengal, and it is there also. They still increase. The fan also increased. Now it's much bigger size. This fan, Bengal fan, and Bengal fan is a very interesting feature. And this Bengal fan is also very old. If you drill, they are finding oil and gas also, like Godavari basin and all that. So Bengal fan, but it's a slow, main thing, geology, everything is slow process. So it's not going to affect immediately. But only one aspect is this Bengal fan has these sediments which have a potential for oil and gas.
Thank you, sir. There is another question from Somudro. He was asking, if the Himalayas were formed from the upliftment of the Tethys Sea, then why there is a classification of higher Himalayas like Himadri, lesser Himalayas, Himachal and Sivaliks?
So that is the present, Tethys Sea was disappeared. there is no more Tethys Sea now. It has become part of Himalaya, right? So Tethys Sea was before Himalaya, then Tethys Sea destroyed, right? And some part left, largely it is destroyed. And the present higher, lesser Himalaya is what we see today. If you come to Himalaya, visit, then you will yourself realize, if you go from the Ganga plain to the north, you just on the basis of physiography, you'll see this is outer Himalaya, south Himalaya, lesser. So I would suggest him, please go for holidays sometime whenever you go, visit some place in Himalaya, from south to north. You also see how the mountain physiography, topography changes here. So how many of you main problems of you have been to the hills of Himalaya from your geography?
Mollar, I think you should answer this question.
So if you have not visited, you must see.
No, sir, I personally haven't visited yet. I am very eager to see the mountains of Himalayas.
So for you, nearest is don't have to come to that. Go to Darjeeling.
Yeah, that will be the
Or
nearest.
Gangtok, yeah, but
Yes. Okay, sir. We have another question from Shudip Jana. Sir, thanks. What is the future of the Ganges and the Brahmaputra river? Are we going to lose these rivers in far future?
future is if the glaciers disappear, there will be no river. So that is the main thing is climate change. If the climate change comes, the monsoon is weak. So it all depends on the climate change.
Exactly.
How the climate is, what kind of climate takes turn, that how the climate changes in future. So that will change the river system also.
Okay, sir. He has also asked how much changes are going to happen in their discharges.
Yeah, a lot of changes. It is already people are studying and some changes are taking place. Discharge is becoming less as glacier reside.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I personally have one question, sir. Sir, we have been seeing that after the building bridges in the Uttarakhand, there are many disasters happening continuously, like the flooding situations and the landslides. Okay. So same types of barrages are forming over our Tista River. So what situations we can see in the near future? Will it be the same as Uttarakhand, or there is any geological changes over the two areas?
No, yeah, Uttarakhand, there is special, Uttarakhand has a large, because like Tista, you have one river. Uttarakhand, you have so many rivers, river valleys. So these valleys are very near. And so the situation will be different. Sikkim, we have one major river. But here, rivers are parallel rivers, means at least 3-4 rivers. So the drainage system is different. If you just go and see the drainage system, the Uttarakhand drainage system is different from that major features of it. So I think that is different. But natural disaster once a while will occur anywhere in India. That all depends on climate also. You have a cloud burst, like break of glacier. It can occur in Nepal, it can occur anywhere.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much. We haven't got any questions yet. So
I have one little announcement. Sorry to interrupt you, Shorina.
oh, it's okay.
Thank you, sir, for your lecture. And I believe, like, as I am also from geography background, I don't think that we can spend a National Science Day in a better way than this, of hearing about the origin of Himalayan earthquake. So I thank you a lot. One message from Professor Pandey that we have one offline program going on in Adamas University, and Pandey sir had to leave this meeting. to attend this program. So he just conveyed apology for not being here. But we have our former Dean, Professor Bimal Kumar Sarkar, Professor Sanjeev Ghosh here, and we will continue with all our participants and of course with you, sir. Thank you.
I thank you very much for making this program and organizing and conducting this thing.
Sir, we have one quiz program after this as well. And if possible, sir, we would love you to be part of that quiz.
I think I would like to take leave.
Okay.
And quiz program, you can go ahead. Best of wishes.
Okay, but before leaving, sir, there is one request to Sanjeev Ghosh, sir. I think Shorina would be doing this.
Yeah.
Over to you, Shorina.
Thank you, ma'am. So now I would request our respected Professor Sanjeev Ghosh, sir, to conclude this session. Professor Sanjeev Ghosh, sir, is our Professor Emeritus. He was the former Professor of Chemistry and the Principal of Presidency College. He is known for his various research papers on chemistry. Sir is associated with the Adamas University since about very beginning, and he is also the mentor of School of Basic and Applied Science. He is the author of nearly 100 publications in international journals and 80 research abstracts in various international and national conferences. So over to you, sir.
I thank first our speaker, Professor Thakur, for giving a. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing. Yeah.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Thakur, for giving such a nice lecture. I think all participants, including students and teachers and others, will be benefited a lot because huge thing that you have delivered to our students. And this is a National Science Day, and we want some lecture which is a popular lecture. And this is really a popular lecture. You expressed in a very lucid manner and a popular way to give information regarding Himalayas and earthquakes. Hope this will benefit all our students. And I thank all the organizers who have organized this, particularly Kasturi Mukherjee, our Dean Sir, Jitendra Pandey Sir, and Vice Chancellor, Chancellor, and all other students who have participated. And also I thank Molnar and others who have anchored this program. National Science Day is a day observed for Professor C.V. Raman, who discovered the Raman spectroscopy, Raman effect, and that was done in Kolkata. You should know this, that was done in Kolkata in a very small laboratory situated in a place called Bowbajar these days. Later on, it was moved to Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. Now, Ramanathan, I think this the Raman and his student Krishnan did this work together, and Krishnan took a lot of pain to invent this particular thing because those days, there was no laser or nothing, high source of light, only mercury lamp was used to detect this. And the Raman effect is such an effect, thousands of scientists every day, they utter the word Raman. This is a great, for India, because these scientists, they lot of people in chemistry, biology, in physics, in material science, they study the Raman effect, Raman spectroscopy every day for their research work or for their other work. So this is a great thing for India, and that is why the government of India has announced this date as a National Science Day. And I really enjoyed Professor Thakur's talk, so that science can be popularized in this way. And with these things, I want to hand over to you, Mal.